You know, we are talking about, when we say children with disabilities, that is a wide spectrum. You can have a child with a very mild learning disability, or you can have a child who is nonverbal and physically unable to communicate in our typical way. And how are we going to assess both of those kids? It needs to be with different tests. You can't use the same test for every child, just like we couldn't do the same educational programming for every child. So in response, in my opinion, to the question on how are we measuring progress, well, part of that, we're still in the development of figuring out we need to evaluate each child differently, depending on their diagnosis and their ability. We do need to show progress, but it's not going to be on a fill-in-the-dot test. Dr. Thomas, did you have a comment on this?
I think we've kind of gotten fairly broad on the question, and so I'd just like to fill in again as far as some points from Logos is concerned. In the handout, I believe it's page 3, I have tore mine apart, so it talks about Logos School, a high-quality, cost-effective partner. And down at the bottom part of that handout, it's talking about as far as a strategic partner to be able to improve test scores, reduce the dropout rate, improve graduation rate, increase the number of college-bound students, provide frequent support and communications to the parents, reduce staff wear and tear that leads to turnover, and keeping the students safe, alive, and free. One of the things that, as far as Logos is concerned, and I think it's important, as I pointed out again, we're a 501c3, we're a not-for-profit. Our ethnicity, diversity continues to be between 32 and 34%. 22% of our students come from families of a combined income of $25,000 or less. 48% come from families of combined income of $50,000 or less. I think these are some of the things that surprise people a lot of times when you're talking about a private school. Again, we're a 501c3. The other thing that when I took over 14 years ago, one of the key things I wanted to be able to see was results oriented. Up to that point, we're middle school and high school. Up to that point, if someone started in the 7th grade, it's assumed that they would stay there until they were in 12th grade. I couldn't see that. I came out of the business community. And so I was looking at cost effectiveness. I was looking at results oriented. Right now, the average length of stay that a student is going to have with us is going to be somewhere between 26 and 32 months. We're 90% successful with the students that we take. By that means one of two factors. They've either got a high school diploma or they have successfully mainstreamed back to a school of their choice. 99% of those that we mainstream are successful. And the key thing again is what I'm wanting to point out is the success. Every student can succeed. And I think those are two areas to be able to show that accountability and what can be done. The mainstreaming is extremely important, as well as that ability. We push for everyone for a high school diploma. We're not looking at the GED because I feel that we're short-sighting that individual. Now, we could get into the situation as far as when we take a student, they may be reading at a 2nd grade level. They may be performing math at the 2nd. But we can show that within 9 months, 12 months, 15 months, how we have bumped that up 3 grade levels, 5 grade levels, 8 grade levels. And we've got the factors to be able to show. The other thing that we have, and hasn't been discussed at all, but again, we're dealing with behavior. We've got a total track record as far as the behavior of that child. And from a standpoint of the number of incidents per day, per week, per month, per teacher, per therapist, and being able to look at this, look at this total area. And the whole issue again is really helping self-confidence, to be able to learn how to come through with interventions. And that is, again, what I think is critical for an individual who has had some difficulty in the traditional setting, how to go about using the proper interventions.
Great. I have another really good question. We've kind of been talking about that there is a spectrum of severity of disabilities, and one of the questions that someone has is there a threshold level of special needs a child has to have in order to be eligible for the tuition assistance from the state? Many students, perhaps most, require only a few hours a week of special education services and are in regular classrooms 80 to 90% of the time. Are you saying even that 80 to 90% is not best served by the local public schools?
I'm going to take it, but I'm coming from the other side. In other words, as far as from a POS, purchase of service standpoint, and as far as, again, going back to the IEP and the specific goals that have been outlined, is that it works best for us, for that individual to have 100% dedication to that program. Now, I think we're short-sighting if we try to say is that, well, no, we'll take them for an hour a day, and then we will keep them in their regular school for the other 5 hours per day. We're not doing justice to that individual. And so that's from a broad philosophical standpoint. I have to let Dr. Hartman talk as far as scholarship.
Perhaps the reason that we see a continuing pattern of needing more services is the child isn't getting the appropriate services to begin with. Maybe if we went and did it right to begin with, we wouldn't have them have to have more and more and finally drop out or not be served. So philosophically, what we have in the scholarship program is if the child has an IEP in the state of Florida, then they are eligible for the scholarship. It's up to the parent to find the right school for that child. It may be another public school. It may be a private school where the student ratio drops from an average of 25 in the public to 12 in the private. And they just do an hour or two a day. They may be doing pretty much the same model. Or it may be coming like we do to a total immersion of the child in a learning pattern and behavioral correctional pattern that addresses all their needs. Again, we would keep that child, the average hour of our place is about 3 years in Woodland Hall. We do not have them designed to be there all the time, or from the time they graduate, though some have to, they're pretty damaged. Once that scholarship is in place in Florida, it's a little different twist than what you have here and what some of the other programs have. Once a child has the McKay Scholarship, they are always eligible for the McKay Scholarship.